Sarah works the night shift at a hospital that doesn't like to talk about what happened in room 404. Officially, that room doesn't exist anymore. But she's been there. She's checked vitals, changed IV bags, and charted on a patient the system insists was never admitted. And the worst part is, she still remembers his name. Tonight's story takes place in a mid-sized hospital on the edge of a city. By day, it looks like every other hospital you've ever seen. Bright lights, busy hallways, routine meds, and predictable noise. But at night, it becomes something else. The walls feel closer. The monitors sound louder. Shadows gather in doorways and stretch down empty corridors. And sometimes, nurses take care of patients no one else seems to remember. This is the story of room 404, the patient the system refused to recognize, and why that room is now listed as storage on every official map of the building. If you're alone right now, you might want to leave at least one light on.
Sarah has been a night shift nurse for almost 9 years. She's used to odd hours, strange conversations, and the kind of fatigue that makes reality feel a little thinner around the edges. She works on the 4th floor of a hospital with 4 main areas: 2 medical surgical units, an ICU, and what used to be a step-down unit. The 4th floor is where room 404 is. When she first started, the older nurses joked about it. "Don't get assigned to 404, they would say. "The computer hates that bed." At first, Sarah assumed it was nothing more than a glitch. Every unit has some weird bed assignment quirk, some inside joke that predates the new staff. But the rules around 404 were different. There were official ones. No elective admissions to 404. No placing stable patients there unless the hospital is absolutely full. Never assign float staff there alone. And then there were the rules no one wrote down. No one rounds on 404 alone after 3 a.m. If the call light from 404 rings more than 3 times with no clear reason, that nurse's assignment is changed on the next shift. And if anyone sees a figure standing in the doorway of 404 while they're charting at the nurse's station, they don't wave. They don't say hi. They keep their eyes on the screen until the doorway is empty again. Sarah assumed it was just dark humor, night shift superstitions, until the night she took care of the man who, according to the system, didn't exist.
It was technically Wednesday morning, a little after 1:30 a.m. The unit was short-staffed, as usual. Sarah already had 5 patients: a post-op knee replacement, an elderly woman with pneumonia, a young man detoxing, a hospice patient on comfort care, and an overflow trauma patient waiting for an ICU bed. Around 1:40 a.m., her charge nurse, Angela, approached with a clipboard and a tired expression that said she was out of options. "Sarah, I need you to pick up 1 more," she told her. "ER's sending a transfer. Stable, just needs monitoring. They're putting him in 404. Sarah actually laughed when she heard the room number. 404. She asked, "Seriously?" Angela didn't laugh. "ICU's full. Step-down's full. ER has patients in the hallway. He's borderline cardiac. They need a monitored bed, and 402 is getting a new admission in an hour. 404 is the only monitored bed open." Sarah sighed. She knew it wasn't Angela's fault. "What's his name?" "Last name, Carter. First name, Daniel, 38. No isolation, no special precautions. Just a cardiac case that needed eyes on him and a heart monitor." Angela dropped the clipboard at Sarah's workstation and moved on. Sarah logged into the computer to pull up his chart. The bed list loaded. 401, 402, 403, and then 405. No 404. She refreshed the screen. Nothing changed. Sometimes admissions lag. She knew that. She went to give meds to another patient, came back a few minutes later and refreshed again. Still no 404. Still no Carter. That's when she heard the elevator chime at the end of the hall.
The double doors opened and 2 transport techs rolled out of bed. On it lay a man in his late 30s, pale but awake, dark hair, oxygen cannula under his nose, a portable monitor above him, beeping steadily. "Admission for 404, one of the techs announced. Sarah felt a small knot in her stomach, but walked toward them anyway. "That's mine," she said. As they pushed the bed closer, the patient turned his head and looked at her. His eyes were exhausted but sharp, as if he'd been awake for far too long. "You're my nurse?" he asked. "Yes, I'm Sarah. We're gonna get you settled, okay?" He tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good," he said quietly. I don't like being alone in hospitals at night." "Most people don't. You're in good hands." They wheeled him into 404. When Sarah flipped the light switch, the fluorescence flickered once. Just once. Old wiring, she told herself, but the way the shadows jumped across the walls made the room feel like it was flinching. They moved him from the transport stretcher to the unit bed. On his wrist, the ID band read, "Carter Daniel, male, 38. His monitor synced to the wall unit and began displaying his vitals. Sinus tachycardia. Fast, but controlled. "Allergies?" Sarah asked. "Penicillin," he answered. "Pain level?" 4, he said after a pause. "Feels more like pressure than pain." Everything about the situation seemed ordinary, too ordinary. Sarah turned to the whiteboard on the wall and wrote, "Nurse, Sarah. Dr. Patel. Welcome, Daniel Carter." Daniel watched her write his name, his gaze tracking each stroke of the marker. "Will you be here all night?" he asked. "I'm here until 7 a.m. If you need anything, just hit the call button." His eyes went to the small gray button on the rail. He nodded, almost to himself. Before leaving, Sarah told him what she tells all her patients. If you feel worse or if something doesn't feel right, even if you can't explain it, hit the button. I'd rather come in for nothing than come in too late. He held her gaze longer than most patients do. "I know," he said softly. I've been on the other side of that." Sarah wondered if he meant as a family member, or maybe he used to work in healthcare. She adjusted his IV, checked his monitor again, and stepped out to chart his admission. She didn't know this was the last time she'd see him awake.
Back at the nurse's station, Sarah logged into the system and refreshed the bed list. 401, 402, 403, 405. No 404. That wasn't just a delay. As soon as a patient arrives on the floor, the bed normally populates in real time. She opened the search bar and typed Carter Daniel. No results. She tried Carter, filtered to that day. Nothing. Now it wasn't just an annoyance. It was a problem. Sarah called the ER. "Hi, this is Sarah on 4 East," she said. "I just got a transfer in 404, last name Carter, first name Daniel. I don't see him in the system yet. Can you check on your end?" The clerk on the other end typed for a moment. "What room did you say?" 404, Sarah repeated. There was a pause. "We don't have a 404 listed on the bedboard," the clerk said carefully. "You mean 403? Sarah frowned. "No, 404. They just sent him up. Male, late 30s, on a monitor from your ER. The typing resumed, faster this time. I don't see any Carter admitted to 4 East. The only Carter I have is a discharge from last week. Discharge? Asked Sarah. What was his first name? Daniel, the clerk replied. Sarah's chest tightened. And what was his disposition? She asked quietly. Expired in ICU. Time of death, 3:17 a.m., 7 days ago. Sarah let out a strained, nervous laugh. Well, he's definitely not expired. He's in bed 404 right now. I'm looking at his monitor on my screen. Sarah, the clerk repeated, we don't even have a 404 on the board. Your unit skips from 403 to 405. You know that. Sarah glanced at the bed list. The clerk was right. On the digital floor map, the room numbers jumped from 403 straight to 405. But on the separate cardiac monitoring screen, she could see room 404, HR 112, SpO2 96%, BP 138/84. A moving green waveform traced his heartbeat in real time. He wasn't in the system, but his heart was on her screen. Maybe it's a charting delay, she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. I'll call IT. She hung up. She didn't call IT because at that exact moment, the call light for 404 lit up.
Sarah walked down the hallway toward 404. The floor felt quieter than usual. 404's door was slightly open, a thin line of light spilling into the corridor. Inside, the room was dim. No TV, no noise, just the soft glow of the monitor and the faint hum of the air vent. Daniel lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. The call button sat loosely in his hand, but his thumb wasn't pressing it. "Hey," Sarah said softly, stepping inside. "You called?" He turned his head slowly toward her. "Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you're still here." "I am. I'm right down the hall. I can see your monitor from the station. You're not alone." He swallowed and looked past her toward the door. "Sometimes the rooms up here feel very far away from the nurse's station, especially at night." "They're closer than they feel," she reassured him. He studied her for a moment. Then, in a quieter voice, he asked, If something happens and I'm not on your list yet, will you still come?" The question hit her with a strange, cold weight. "What do you mean, not on my list?" Sarah asked. He blinked slowly, as if trying to focus on a memory that hurt to recall. "Sometimes they don't see you, if you're not in the system." Sarah tried to keep her tone light. "Well, I see you. Your monitor's on my screen. That's enough for me." He gave a tiny, fragile smile. "Good. Then maybe it'll be different this time." "This time?" she repeated. But his eyes drifted closed, as if even those few words had exhausted him. His vitals remained stable enough. Fast, but not in full crisis. Sarah adjusted his blankets and stepped back out, telling herself he was just anxious. She didn't realize that from this point on, everything would spiral around a single moment in time. 3:17 a.m.
3:17 a.m. The night moved on. Meds. Labs. A confused patient trying to climb over the bed rails. A family member asking, "Is he really okay?" when both of them know the real answer is complicated. At some point, Sarah realized she hadn't gone into 404 in nearly an hour. She glanced up at the monitor display. Daniel's heart rate had crept up to 124. Still sinus rhythm, nothing that screamed code, but enough to make her uneasy. She pushed her chair back, ready to walk down the hall and check on him. Just then, the hallway lights blinked. A quick flicker, a tiny power hiccup. Monitors throughout the unit beeped in response, briefly dropping connection before resetting. Sarah's eyes went automatically to the screen. The line labeled 404 went flat. A straight, unbroken line. No waveform, no beeps. Worse than that, there was no alarm. No sound, no flashing red. Just silence. Sarah hit the emergency button on the wall and shouted, "Code Blue, room 404." No one moved. Angela looked up from her charting, eyebrows knitting in confusion instead of panic. "Sarah, what are you doing?" she asked. 404 is crashing. I lost his rhythm." Angela stared at her for a second. "Sarah," she said carefully, "we don't have anyone in 404 tonight." Sarah didn't answer. She just ran. The door to 404 was closed. She didn't remember closing it. She grabbed the handle and shoved it open. The room inside was completely dark. No monitor glow, no IV pump lights, no shifting shadows on the bed. Just the still, empty silence of an unused room. The bed was neatly made. Crisp sheets, tight corners, no imprint where a body had lain. The whiteboard on the wall was blank. No nurse, Sarah. No welcome, Daniel Carter. The clipboard at the foot of the bed held no admission papers, no orders, no label. Sarah flicked the overhead light on. The harsh fluorescent glare washed over everything. The room looked like it hadn't been touched in days. No patient, no belongings, no trace of Daniel at all. Except for one thing. On the wall where the monitor should display vitals, there was a faint, ghostly image burned into the screen. Numbers and letters, barely visible unless you stared. HR 112, SpO2 96%, BP 138 over 84. The vitals Sarah had seen earlier in the night, frozen there, like an afterimage. She stepped back, her heart pounding.
Back at the nurse's station, Sarah's hands trembled as she logged into the system again. "Angela," she said, "who was assigned to 404 last week?" Angela frowned. "No one," she answered. "We haven't used 404 since—" She hesitated. "Since when?" Sarah pressed. "A code," Angela admitted. "A bad one. A guy came up from ER, cardiac case. He crashed at 3:17 a.m. We worked him for a long time, never got him back." Angela's eyes drifted down the hall toward the door of 404. After that, admin flagged the room. They said maintenance issues, but IT took 404 off the bedboard. It's not even an option anymore. The room technically doesn't exist. Sarah swallowed. "What was his name?" she asked, even though she already knew the answer. Angela hesitated. "Carter. Daniel Carter." Sarah turned back to the computer and typed his name one more time. This time, the discharge summary appeared instantly, like it had always been there.
Carter Daniel, male, 38, admitted with chest pain, rapid deterioration, code called at 3:09 a.m. Time of death, 3:17 a.m. Disposition, deceased. At the bottom, in cold administrative language, was a note. Bed 404, taken out of service until further notice. Do not assign. Sarah looked up at the clock on the wall. The red second hand glided past the 12. The time was 3:17 a.m. The exact time of his recorded death a week earlier, the moment his rhythm had vanished from her screen. In a room that wasn't in service.
Near the end of her shift, Sarah walked back down the hallway to 404. Officially, she had no reason to go there. Unofficially, she couldn't leave without seeing it again. The corridor around that door felt strangely muted, like the usual hospital sounds didn't quite reach it. The door to 404 was closed. She opened it and stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the faint spill of light from the hallway. She didn't turn on the overhead light. She just stood there, listening. There was no monitor, no beeping, no wheezing oxygen line. But for a moment, a very brief, almost imagined moment, it sounded like a heart monitor far away, muffled behind a wall that no longer existed. "Daniel," she whispered. Her voice sounded small in the empty room. "If you can hear me, I saw you. I took care of you. You were on my list, even if the system didn't show it." The air didn't turn cold. No unseen hand touched her shoulder. No voice answered. But the dark monitor on the wall flickered once. Just a single quick flash of green. One solitary heartbeat traced across the screen. Then it disappeared, leaving the glass black and empty. Sarah turned the light on at last. The room looked like storage again. Clean bed, bare walls, no signs of life. As she stepped out into the hallway, something caught her eye. The small metal plaque beside the door where the room number should be was blank. The outline where 404 used to be was just visible in the paint around it. No number now. No labels. On the newest floor plans, that space is listed simply as storage, not in use. On the digital bedboard, 404 is skipped entirely. As far as the system is concerned, 404 doesn't exist. But some nights, usually around 3:17 a.m., the old call light panel behind the nurse's station does something it shouldn't. A tiny red bulb labeled 404, a light that shouldn't be connected to anything anymore, blinks once. No sound, no alarm, no timestamp in the computer logs, just a single silent flash, like a heartbeat. And whenever that happens, Sarah remembers the way Daniel looked at her and asked if she would still come for him if he wasn't on the list. She tells herself it's nothing. Old wiring, residual power, glitches in a building that's older than most of the staff. That's the rational answer. But somewhere, in the thin space between a full code and a completed death summary, it feels like a man named Daniel Carter is still making sure he isn't alone on the night shift.
If you made it this far, you're definitely one of us. Tell us in the comments if you've ever worked a night shift, hospital, nursing home, anywhere, and seen something you still can't explain. And if you want more stories from the dark side of the hospital, make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and we'll see you on the next night shift.